perhaps the most exciting time to be an entrepreneur in India. Everyone, we are told, is watching the space very carefully, not just if you're in India, but as much if you are abroad, particularly Silicon Valley, we are told. Whether it's entrepreneurs, want to be entrepreneurs, investors, VCs, or just the Aam Aadmi, not a day goes by when a startup or a founder is not making news. Invariably, so far, we're glad to see for all the right reasons. But what about all those cynics who say that what about the valuations? Are they real? What about those who question how long today's big startup stars are going to last? Well, that's what we're looking at. A special panel with me now. Ashok Madhavali, Deputy Director, NASSCOM, joining us from Bangalore. Raman Roy, member in Angels Network with us. Arunab Kumar, founder of the Viral Fever, joining us from Mumbai. And also Danish Ahmed, CEO and founder of Shop City with us. Thanks all so much for taking out time to speak to us. Raman Roy, sir, first to you. If someone were to come to you and say that, all these big numbers that are creating headlines that, valued at whatever billions of dollars and all of that is not real, and this is a bubble and it's not going to last, how would you respond?
No, but you see, it would have been a bubble if it was theoretical. If somebody was saying we value it at that and there was a, something printed on it, somebody's cutting a check and somebody's putting money into the bank for that valuation. So what else does real mean? There are some very smart people who are investing. I mean, somebody who's putting in $1 billion is not going to essentially an idiot, right? So he or she also has a wherewithal to understand to say that if he's investing at a $10 billion valuation, there is potential for that to multiply, not just grow, multiply. And that is based on the logic and rationale that is underlying a startup. So whether you take the Oolas of the world or the Snapdeals and Flipkarts of the world, there is an underlying logic to what they will get to. Amazon took forever to make a profit, but once it started making a profit,
there's been no looking back.
There is no looking back. So there was a logic. There were people who understood that logic. I mean, you can talk about the same for Google. Why would you do search and not charge for it? It is one of the most robust business models. And there are people who don't understand. Take Apple as an example. 16 people declined to invest in what is Apple today. Before the 17th said, I'll put in a little bit of money, and he's a multi-billionaire for that little bit of money that put in. So there is a method in the madness. We can talk whether that method can be fine-tuned, modified, but to say that there is no method in the madness, I think would be erroneous.
Ashok Madhavali sir, if I can ask you, many people, of course, now asking, is this the best time to be an entrepreneur? Perhaps there's no way really to answer that. Who's to say there may be better times ahead or not? But as NASSCOM, how do you see the space as it is looking to you right now?
This is definitely a great time to start up. Capital is flowing in like never before. Access to infrastructure, which was always a problem in the early 2000s, is not a problem. You have the best infrastructure, in whether it's the cloud infrastructure, the mobile devices, all of that is available to you, and all of that is cheap. The third thing is talent. We are seeing more and more people coming back from the US or whichever country they are at, and coming back to India and setting up these companies. So talent is coming back, and we are also seeing a lot of people coming out of engineering schools, of top engineering colleges, business schools across the country, and all straight away going into the funded startups that are coming up in today's market.
Arunab, if I could come to you, an online entertainment network, there are many perhaps when you started out who would have thought, is this really something that will have its takers? You've of course shown the success that it can have. Tell me, help me get into the mind of an entrepreneur. What was a phase of doubt? Did you have any doubts? Were there people it always happens, right? There are enough people, there are enough critics, there are enough people questioning you, doubting you, and putting those seeds of doubt in your mind. What was it like for you being in a space that perhaps many hadn't walked down before?
See, I think it's a very relevant question for me, because I'll tell you one small simple story. So I was shooting the fourth show under our comedy vertical Cutiapa, and I woke up to shoot that at 6 a.m. in the morning. And the night before, I had a call with a couple of contemporary guys who were working in big agencies and who were earning lakhs, 4 lakh, 5 lakh paycheck. And I was waking up in the morning and I was combing my hair, which I have very few now. And I was thinking, why am I going at 6 a.m. in the morning to shoot something which is called Cutiapa? And does it really make sense? And I remember that particular incident because a cloud of doubt dawned upon me, and I thought, I don't know, whether I'm doing this right or whether I'm not, and whether this is going in the right direction. But still, I got up and went for the shoot primarily because I enjoyed doing it. So if you personally ask me, my thing has always been process orientation. I mean, I have enjoyed doing what I have been doing for the last 5 years, and over the last 3 years or 4 years, we've been able to build something out of that. I don't really count myself as a guy who thought of starting up and who wanted to be an entrepreneur, and who, I think for me, the story was very simple, that there is a product which I felt is missing, which is certain kind of content. I thought I could make it and people would like it, and eventually 3 years later it became a perfect product market fit, which is a jargon from straight out of the startup world. So I think it was quite organic in my case, but I think, like I always say, that startup is the new guitar and every college student wants one. So I think, that's...
Raman, if I could just ask you, I saw you agreeing with a lot of what he said. I think one thing is to believe in yourself even when others may have that doubt. You've sort of worked with, entrepreneurs. You've seen startups up close and personal. How does one identify, or how do you sort of even now figure out that this is perhaps something that sort of holds value or might just be worth it? Is it just instinct? How much of it is instinct? First, tell me that.
Let me make some controversial statements.
Always
Entrepreneurs are loony. The belief based on the way we see the world, the way we see what can be made. So in evaluating a startup, you look at the idea, you look at the team, you look at what I call the fire in the belly. I mean, you're right, I meet a lot of startups as a founder member of the Indian Angel Network. It's a core part of our aim to be able to create an ecosystem with these startups. I am so energized after I meet a bunch of them. The confidence, their belief, their thinking that they can change the world.
Right. They do believe that, don't they, Danish? And as someone, and I just get you in on something that I do want to know, which is, you worked with Yebhi, that was, you founded that, now you're with something else. Something that I always find incredible about entrepreneurs, whether you call them loony or not, but is always their tremendous appetite for risks. I don't know if that's fair, but it's okay. Like for them to say that we stumble and then we try something else is absolutely okay. And that seems to be sort of like a new thing. It's like a breath of fresh air, because that wasn't the case many years ago, where you would like to go down the straight and narrow and the tried and tested. But now it's okay. I stumble, I fail. It's okay. I don't worry about it. We'll cross the bridge when we come to it. Was that how it was for you as well?
No, I absolutely agree with that. See, raising capital, last time when I started this venture, it took 3 years to raise capital. This time I had capital before I even started the venture. So the environment has certainly changed, and there's enough people who are willing to back you. And once you have failed, it teaches you a lot of things that bring a lot of value to your next venture. So failing is actually the mother of success, as they call it. And if you look at any of the successful any of the successful entrepreneurs today, most of them have failed at some ventures before they learned and they got up and built it again.
And which is of course very true. Mr. Matravali, this whole thing about failure. Someone told me recently there's no such thing as a failed entrepreneur, because once you have had an idea, you've tried to execute it, you have succeeded. So there's no such thing. But there are all those, of course, who say that there are so many people starting out. About 2 new startups are born every single day. Do you believe there's space for all? Should there necessarily be space for all anyway?
Firstly, I think there are a lot of people who are trying different things. And what we're seeing is, especially because we deal with a lot of tech startups, a lot of them come from very engineering-focused backgrounds, and they really don't think through business as much, and they really think about solving a specific problem. And when they actually come and write hundreds of lines of code, but then they realize it's really hard to sell that.
Right.
So I think that is something a lot of startups need to focus on, and which is why people fail. But I think increasingly we are seeing more and more people are accepting failure across the ecosystem. It's not so much a societal stigma. In fact, NASSCOM itself has organized a few failed conferences where we celebrate a failure.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
people, entrepreneurs come.
That's really wonderful. In fact, Arunabh, I'm sure that you could contribute to that as well, perhaps, you know, a spoof or something. But Arunabh, you know, if I could just ask you very quickly, how much did sort of the fear of failure ride on your mind when waking up at 6 o'clock, not sure why am I doing this, but I do love it? Does it even sort of cross your mind?
So I think, you know, failure has been consistent in human civilization and business civilization, so to say. But in the new economy, in the startup world, it is more rapid, it is more vibrant because a lot more failures are happening, because a lot more people are trying.
And it's also
so
important
I think,
to know, and sorry if I may interrupt, it's also important to know that this is a space where, say, failure isn't held against you. It's totally cool, because I've had so many people, top startups, say to me that we would rather go for someone, if we are hiring, rather go for someone who's tried it and perhaps has burnt his fingers than go for someone who's a novice and has this great idea and believes he's going to change the world without realizing the challenges involved. So it's not really, at least in this space, it's not held against you as perhaps in a conventional job.
Yeah, I think failure is a very important stepping stone, because if you've gone through that obstacle and you've developed that emotional wisdom, which comes along when failure comes and when you are no longer glamorized for having started up, and then you really, like someone said that out of 10 startups, maybe just 1 succeeds and the 9 fails. But I think that embracing that failure, learning from that, and to be able to start again, you know, do something, I think that is really very, very glorious. That is what we have begun to celebrate, and that's just first of the important steps that we need to take.
Do you sort of, Raman Roy, sort of, do you have to tell people that this is an idea, you know, sort of, so someone's sitting on the fence, but you believe the idea is good and he or she can make a go of it? Would you sort of encourage them, sort of push them to what point to say, no, go try it? What do you have to lose?
I would push so hard that I've had spouses of those people come back
I see.
and really tell me that I'm misleading
Oh,
his or
really?
her spouse.
Oh, okay.
And I've had the same spouse in a particular venture 3 years later come back with a box of sweets, and she's waiting and she says, "You remember me?" I said, "Yes, I do." She says, "I came to give this." "For what?" She says, "You were right, I was wrong. And look what happened, you changed our lives."
But is that won't always be the case, will it? I mean, that's a
No,
great example,
look.
and I'm sure that that's great vindication for everything that you're talking about. But
Look, failure is a part. That is what Arnab said, and Ashok said that as NASSCOM, and I have the luxury of sitting on the executive committee there, we are now trying to set up a process of celebrating failure.
right, yeah,
But
that's
you
what
know, we
mentioned,
talk about successes, but if I talk about the number of times I fell down and the number of bruise marks that I have, a lot of people would burst into tears out of pure sympathy.
Right.
Because that is par for the course. Not everything you come up with succeeds.
Right.